Hello and welcome to Social Business Through the Firewall, brought to you by stopthinksocial.com. I'm Liz Christopher, and today we are discussing last Thursday's #SW Twitter chat topic, which was social productivity, i.e. how being social makes us more productive. Sharing their great experience and top tips today, we have Colin, who is an information architect. We have Garick, who is a community manager for Satya Solutions. Hopefully I've got that right, Garick.
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. We have Greg, who is a social business consultant for Actians.
Nanu.
We have Jenn, community manager for Jenn Intelligent.
Hey everybody.
And Stephanie, Hootsuite community celebratoire.
Hey guys.
And to start off with, we're going to talk about, does being social actually make you productive? So Jenn, I'll come to you first. Do you find, I mean, obviously as a community manager, I guess, as your role, you are obviously using social media. Do you find, have you got any sort of examples of perhaps how it actually helps you to be more productive in that role?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we've got so many different tools. I think that this was like a part of the discussion that we had on Twitter on Thursday. There's so many different tools out there, and you know, the time that you have to take to like figure each tool out. You know, once you find the tools that work for you, you need to be able to set how much time you're going to use with each one. And one of the tools, and this is like probably one of the simplest tools, and I think I've talked about it before, but when it comes to Twitter and how I'm getting information from the different you know, verticals that I work with, I'm using those Twitter lists to help me get into the right message that I'm working with at that time. And also, this may sound really silly, but I love favoriting a tweet because it's my way of going back. It's just like this little bookmark, and I can go back and get a link. You know, if I don't want to bookmark it right away, I just want to read it. I haven't read the story yet. Maybe I want to retweet it, but I'm not quite sure. It gives me that chance to go back and read it, so that I'm not like interrupting what I'm doing at that very moment. So it's really a matter of how you look at the tools and exploring all they have to offer. Even the little tiny parts, little accessories in your tool can be really helpful.
So does that mean, Jenn, that you find that to be productive, it's about using the right tools?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it is. I think it's also about you too. I actually went back and favorited this tweet, and this was from Colin, actually. We were talking, actually, I was like, I'll read it to you, because my first tweet was, Colin, I feel I need some kind of strategy to help me divide my social activity and actual work productivity. And he said, that's why you need to apply rigor to the social activity, assuming you apply rigor to your actual productivity. At first I was like, is he insulting me? And then I said, no, that's a great quote though. I mean, that's applicable to everybody. So like, are you actually productive? And it's just like anything. It's like, you know, how we talk about social and social business. If you're really good at something, the tools are only going to enhance it. So if you're not a productive person generally, the tools may not help you as much. So it really depends on how you're using them.
Thanks, Jenn. And so, Colin, do you find that, have you found social media really helps you to be more productive?
So it's interesting. Social media really is a new term for something we've done in the past many times over. It's really being social. In other words, and as we've probably learned from the past, that the more we share and the more we work together, the more productive we can be if we have the right goals and the right controls in place to do that. So I'm kind of repeating what Jenn has said, is it's not the tools necessarily that make you more productive. It's the way that you engage and the rigor that you bring to engagement that can increase your productivity.
Right, thanks, Colin. And Greg, what's your views on the subject of productivity?
I think that, you know, we tend to make this a tools focused discussion, but I think the reality is that it's about attention management, right? It is so easy to start your day and let social kind of drag you through the day because there's something here or something there to go out and, as Jenn was saying, a link that you follow, and next thing you know, that leads to something else and something else. So I do think it really requires a lot of perseverance to have a plan and stick with it. I think if you don't have a plan and stick with it, you'll find yourself at the end of the day going, what did I accomplish?
So more about structuring what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Jenn was saying about, allotting a certain amount of time for activity. I think that helps you stay very focused on accomplishing what you said. I mean, if you look at, my background is behind the firewall, so I feel that, in that environment there are different productivity enhancers that can be leveraged than participating in public social networks. But, perhaps we'll chat about that later.
I was going to say, have you got some examples of...
Yeah, actually, when I was at Alcatel-Lucent, I think program management and project management was an area where social really helped a lot, because what would tend to happen in any kind of project would be is that we wouldn't find out about issues until the status meeting, at the weekly status call. And as I was rolling out social there, the plan was to not have one status call. And what it enabled people to do is to raise issues as soon as they happen in an enterprise social network, and then also notify a project of task completion stuff, so that that lag time that would happen between task completion and the status call would disappear. And actually, on a couple of projects I managed that way, I took weeks off the project plan as a result of that.
So really, it's in this example that you've given, Greg, it's really provided you with a better way of communicating and enabling greater communication.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think what it does is that, we tend to, in the past, and a lot of people still do this, is they tend to use email that is already overwhelmed with it. So important project status updates and things like that aren't necessarily noticed right away, whereas is that having a group associated with a project where the only communications are around that project is very valuable.
Thanks, Greg. Garick, what's your experience of productivity when being social?
So we talk about social productivity, and I think it really comes back to the same thing of ROI, return on investment, because you could be using these tools and be active socially and be producing a lot, but not actually being effective at what you're doing. So to me, social productivity means actually how many sales am I making, how much business am I affecting through my social efforts. And so I think we can measure this in how many relationships did I build today, or now that I've gotten a position with a staffing firm, another metric that I could start measuring is how many resumes do we receive, or how many clients are we getting from these social efforts.
Thanks, Garick. So it's about sort of measuring what you're doing and making sure that you are being productive by measuring the effort that you're pushing into it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think we have to define what we mean by being productive. I mean, you can produce a lot and not actually do anything. I mean, like, I could sit and I could be social, I could produce, I could be talking to a lot of people all day and night, but it doesn't actually affect my business. It actually doesn't do anything, So what's being productive, right? Being productive is actually moving that business needle.
Yes, and that's where that sort of thing is what do we mean by being socially productive? And it is a tricky one. Stephanie, obviously working for Hootsuite, I think quite a lot of us here use Hootsuite because it's we like the Hootsuite. But what sort of experience have you got of sort of, obviously working for Hootsuite, you obviously are in the business of social media, but where have you found social media to help you be more productive?
Yeah, I think it all depends, again, with what Garick and Greg was saying about what is our actual goal on being active on social media and whatnot. And for me, as a community soldier of Hootsuite, I actively look at fans that are ready to turn to be super fans or people to hold events for us. So being social on social media for me, it's actually what is my job description of what becomes something that's productive. So it is highly encouraged here.
Thanks, Stephanie. So we've talked about sort of the positives of being social, making us more productive. But are there times that being social actually makes us less productive? And Greg, I know that you and I have had a sort of behind-the-scenes conversation about this, so I'd like you to lead this one.
Well, you know, some of the principles behind being social, right? And I'm going to use a behind the firewall enterprise 2.0 type solution, is to be all inclusive, right? To get people to offer in, weigh in, group, you know, provide crowdsourcing and things like that. You know, sometimes the challenge is being all inclusive is that people think that their opinions absolutely need to be acted upon. And as a project manager, or, you know, somebody who's trying to get something done in there, the challenge is that, you know, you can get involved in having to respond to all of these opinions, and as a result of that, not get anything done, because instead of focusing on moving the ball forward, you're responding to all these opinions that people feel, and you know, that they're entitled to give, and are looking, I guess they're trying to help, but maybe irrelevant. So I think that that's a hard dynamic to balance inside of a social environment.
But don't you get that regardless of being social? You know, you've got email, you've got being stopped at the water cooler.
Yeah, but all right. So you know, unfortunately, what happens is that, you know, if your boss is on there, your boss, you know, if you got stopped at the water cooler, that's got a very limited audience. Unfortunately, if you know, get stopped on a social network and anything goes wrong, the next thing you know is your boss is looking at the thread and saying, how come you didn't do this, right? You know, so there's this CYA element that has to come in as well. And again, all of this stuff takes time and is distracting from actually moving, you know, getting things done.
So the whole sort of self-protecting your job doesn't go away with being social?
No, not at all.
Colin, you stuck your hand up. Was that to say you wanted to speak? I think. You there, Colin? Okay, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a button for stick your hand up, so I just raised it anyway. No, I don't think social is any more of a diversion than any of the other things we've had in the past, whether it's the coffee machine, the pools, the football pools team, or the fantasy football chat teams, or even solitaire. I mean, how many businesses or how many desks have you walked past with people playing solitaire on their screen? I think it really comes down to having a focus, and I think while there are more distractions with social media, you're equally as distracted by other things as well.
Right, so, but I guess there's the sort of distracted by clearly blatant not doing stuff that is work related. So chatting to your friends or your family, which obviously isn't really doing anything to help progress your work. And there is sort of, Garick, what you were sort of talking about, which is sort of chatting away to people, but not necessarily making you more productive. You're just sort of socially chatting to people that might help you down the line, maybe, or not, but, you know, it's hard to tell.
Well, right, you should target and focus, and then from that you should have a strategy of who you're doing and what you're doing, and you should be able to measure the efforts of those strategies, of the efforts of what you're doing.
Right, so it comes back to what we've talked about before, which is you really do have to have a plan and a strategy for what you're doing if you really want to make good use of being social. You've got to really think about what you're trying to achieve. Otherwise, there is the danger that you could inadvertently be unproductive. Do we all agree with that?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Lots of nods of heads. Okay, what I want to talk about is there are quite a lot of businesses that perhaps aren't completely there with the whole getting of social media and the benefits. And we know that there are lots of people, I know lots of people that cannot access any social media whilst at work because they've locked down all the sites. And I guess the reason that I'm hearing from businesses is that they don't think that people are being productive. They think that people are just, spending their time chatting to friends. They don't see the benefits. What do we think of that? Yes, Garick?
So I think this is kind of ridiculous because, yes, we can waste our time away chatting to our friends and to our family, but social media is really just a new way of communication. So think about when the telephone first came out, if your employer said, no, I don't want you using the telephone. Well, okay, it's just a tool. Yes, you can waste your time away talking to people, but you can also build relationships. And we know people in and out of work that can help us with our work. So if we're allowed to use Google and use Google to look for information, why not use our network of resources of the people we know?
Yeah, I have a problem with this too. I mean, it's if you are finding people are unproductive, isn't it not to look at the reason for them to look for how they're being unproductive? It's to find out why they're being unproductive. Have they been set the right goals? Are they on track? Have they been given the resources they need to complete their job? Those are much more important than blaming an external influence for their lack of productivity at work. There are other reasons for it. I think the thing that happens is the biggest challenge we now face across the industry is that we're being asked to think outside the box, outside the company, and grow our networks, our social networks, beyond the confines of our cubes in our organization. If you close that off at the firewall, then you're going to be isolated, and you are not going to be part of that growing, more productive community.
I just want to add to that the other thing that's going on is that because of mobile and everybody having smartphones, the enterprise is losing their ability to block that activity anyway. They may be able to block that activity on their PC, but most people are then using their iPhone or their Android device to stay connected. So that's kind of going away. But I also think it depends on what the company profile is. Is that if you're a manufacturing company, perhaps the people on the manufacturing floor shouldn't be allowed to be on Facebook and Twitter because there may be a union involved. There could be a lot of different variables in here. I don't necessarily think that there's a right reason. Obviously, some of it is not only based on on concern that people are wasting time, but there's also some compliance issues. I mean, that is something that I think that we're going to start to see more and more of in 2013.
When you say compliance issues, what do you mean, Greg?
Well, I mean, in the United States, we have FINRA, right? So if you were to share something inappropriately, you could end up in a lawsuit as a result of that. So, a lot of times companies that have, in the financial services industry especially, need to be really careful about what they say in public social networks.
Thanks, Greg. Stephanie, you've got to leave us. I was just about to ask you for some input from you. Are you able to just quickly answer a quick question? Do businesses ever contact you or contact Hootsuite about how to control users' activity through Hootsuite or anything like that?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, I think because I mean, I think a lot of businesses that have locked down Twitter and Facebook for their employees. I just wondered whether in any instances they try and look at the tools and whether there's any sort of tool side things that they look at, and Hootsuite being a Twitter tool.
I don't think on my head now. We don't have any. Well, it's because like most of the people that I know of, if Twitter and Facebook is blocked in their offices, they would use Hootsuite as a side door, because the companies probably don't know about Hootsuite yet or something, but that's therefore they use it. And let me think of another example here.
Just want to pop in and say that's a great tip for people.
Okay.
If your company has locked down Twitter,
yeah.
But you
well,
might.
That's exactly the same thing that we did for China as well. Twitter and Facebook are blocked, so then they use Hootsuite as a side door again to use these items and to do multiple applications like this wave one and render on one website, right? There's one article that I'm thinking of right now, and I'll tweet it out with the SW chat in just a moment here.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah, sorry I have to leave.
Oh, that's all right. It's been great having you, and hopefully we'll maybe see you next week or another time. So just let us know. Thanks, Stephanie. Great. Well, what great tips. I'll have to pass that on because I know quite a few people that can't access any of the social media stuff, and they're not very happy about it. So we've talked about how to be productive. Have we got sort of any specific, whether it's tool-based or process-based, tips on the best way to be productive? Jen, what are your top tips?
Well, it kind of touches back to what we were talking about earlier. I think everybody mentioned, talking about goals and planning, and that basic tool is what's going to help you get the most done. Having that set, tool that you want to use or tools, and then just knowing how you're going to use them, and then looking at the certain amount of time that you're going to dedicate to each one. I know it's difficult in social media. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Just about every day, I feel like I'm doing this. It's just like, and then plates, and then fire, and so it's like, all these different things going on. That's when you have to have a firm grasp of the tool and how long you're going to use it, and what you're using it for. So each channel needs to have a specific goal and a specific voice, so that when you're working through it, you're not making cross purposes with what you're trying to accomplish. So it's just really having that strong grasp. So you just got to keep practicing with your social media tools.
And do you actually have goals on productivity as opposed to actual social media goals?
Yeah, and that's a thing. That was something I was thinking about as we were talking earlier. When it comes to measuring that kind of productivity in social media, and especially if you're working for someone who is setting goals for you, you have to be able to identify what is actually reasonable. You have to be able to approach your management with the SMART goal, and if that's a soft metric versus a hard number, you have to be able to show your employer or your boss, what have you, that this is where that ROI is, and this is what social means, because people are still looking at it as how we looked at numbers in the past, sales numbers and lead numbers and all that. Social is a different animal, and you are in the position to be educating your company about that. So educate yourself.
Thanks, Jen. And Greg, what about you?
So I think for me personally, the biggest productivity gain that I've had is to avoid trying to do switch platforms and stay up on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Google Plus at the same time. I designate blocks of time for each platform. So this way, I don't lose a lot of time to task switching, which takes us a significant amount of time in our brains. And I found by doing that, I'm able to focus deeper on the task at hand and stay focused. I think one of the hardest things to do in social media, because there are so many different channels, is to allow all of these channels to be bombarding you at one time, creating a loss of focus. So I think focus is a great way to lead to greater productivity.
Thanks, Greg. So really sort of schedule your time and focus is your key tip. Yep. Thanks, Greg. Garick?
I think that's a great tip, and something I should do a bit more of. I do take my time and I schedule certain blocks, but I'll say that I monitor Twitter throughout the day because that's just the platform that I seem to be on the most. Yeah. Otherwise, I would say that for me, like a tool that I found that's great is something called Social Bro. It's an app that helps me slice and dice, and as I said before, targeting the people who I'm interested in talking to, the people who are influential within the topics I'm looking for, and for me, yeah, that's what I felt makes me most productive.
Thanks, Garick. Colleen, what are your top tips for productivity?
I have to reinforce what Greg said. I really do think focus is key here. Not just having the goals in mind. I think that you have to measure everything you do against your goals to ensure that you're aligned and you're still consistent with them. But on the focus side, there is a temptation to always look at new tools, mainly because it enables you to do something a little easier than have been done before. But my sort of tip is to remind people that when you move from one platform to another, it's not just a matter of switching on, downloading, turning up, and starting to interact. You've got a legacy there, a legacy of information, a legacy of interactions in the network that's not going to be exactly the same as the platform you're moving to. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just that you have to be aware of it, that you are going to put in a similar amount of work in generating that legacy on the new platform. It would be nice if we could get sort of information independence so that it didn't matter which platform you used, but the information, the data that you create is shareable across all platforms. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet.
And I think, Colin, we've sort of talked a little bit about this offline, that subject. Yeah. And I think we've talked about how I think we are at some point going to have to do a whole chat and show on that whole sort of idea. And we will, I'll have to check the schedule and see what we've got lined up. But I think it definitely makes for an interesting topic. Right, well, we're pretty much at the 30-minute time, which has gone quickly as always. Never seems quite long enough. So there's just enough time for me to ask Jenn. You had a what's hot for this week we were talking about before the show.
Yeah. Well, Monday on the 28th is Community Manager Appreciation Day. Yay! So I know there's going to be a lot of activities everywhere. I'll plug one. There's a Community Manager Hangout. They're doing over the community management group hosted by Tim McDonald, and they're going to be having a 12-hour-long Google Hangout that is going to feature a lot of different people speaking. In fact, I'll run through it. They're going to do a section on community manager around the world with a lot of the folks from Hootsuite. So sorry, Stephanie's on your forums and moderation, marketing and advertising agencies at 10 a.m., various communities of Google 11, and then noon there's community management and education, so talking about schools and education. 1 o'clock social business with community roundtable, which I'll probably be participating in. 2 p.m. content creation. 3 p.m. the Yammer communities, Greg. Maria is going to be talking. And then 4 p.m. how to build a community within different departments. And then after 6, they're going to have hospitality and entertainment community, which will be interesting. And then 7, I think it's a social media for social good, so talking about charities and nonprofits. So it's a full day of talking about the different kind of communities out there. So there'll be a lot of learning, and then turn into Jeremiah Owing's blog to see what he's going to say, because he was the guy who started it a couple of years ago.
Well, so if you're a community manager or aspiring community manager, then Monday is going to be a big day.
Yes.
Wow, 12 hours. Is Tim going to be hosting all of that? He's going to be tired come the end of it.
I think he's hired some help or gotten some volunteers to help with that. So yeah, it's going to be a full day. So I think, Liz, you should jump into a couple of them. So just hop on in. Which one should you do? I think you should do social business with the community roundtable. I think you should do that too.
Yeah, I think I'll look into that actually. If I can find a time that suits the UK. So we'll talk about that after the show. Anyway, we are now over the 30 minutes, and I think it's time for us now, unfortunately, to close off the show. So I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody who has shared their wisdom. Colin, Garick, Greg, Jenn, and Stephanie. And to everybody who's watched, and to let you know that this Thursday's Twitter chat and next Monday's show is on mobile and social equals motional. So that should be quite exciting. So hopefully see you then. And yes, have a good week, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.